Welcome, everybody, to another episode. My name is Adrian Wellman, and today we are talking about nutrition, specifically some of the missed opportunities many of us are facing each day when it comes to nutrition, where we're missing the mark on some key areas, and then some of the misconceptions as well. And we're going to be talking about three different areas. We're going to be talking about hydration, we're going to talk about protein, and fats, and we'll try to keep it as fun and interesting as possible with some real life examples. And today I am doing that with Emily Burtnik, my friend and colleague. We're going to be diving in together on this topic. Emily is a registered holistic nutritionist. She has been by my side. She's my go-to when it comes to nutrition. Anybody needs support on specific areas. They've got certain conditions, things that they're managing. She is that expert when it comes to nutrition. So today we're going to be diving in. Emily, thanks so much for being here today. And
Thank you for having me.
And let's jump into hydration. Let's start off with that. And I guess the one thing I would want, because it's maybe sometimes not really a sexy topic. People think, I need to maybe drink more water. I just want to hear from you and your experience when you're working with clients, family members, friends, you name it. What are some of the things that you keep coming up against when it comes to trying to support people with hydration?
I think I often get asked how to remember to drink more water or what are ways to make it taste better. So for me, it's finding in that person's day where they might be able to implement drinking more of it. And I think first thing in the morning is the best place to start. You're sleeping hopefully 7 to 8 hours, and in that point of time we do lose a lot of our water from our body and we get quite dehydrated, and it's a great point to rehydrate, great place to rehydrate in our day. And if you do that first thing, wake up, drink that water, and make that a habit and routine and just start there, I think that's a really good starting place. And then finding out where in your day you can add more and what's the barrier to adding more. Is it you're at a desk and the water cooler is a long walk away and you're worried about walking past coworkers that are going to distract you from getting your water? Well, have two water bottles and have two water bottles at your desk. So discovering your barriers, I think, is a really good, helpful thing that I do with clients. And then we will work from there on how we can implement more. And taste, I think, is important for people if they're already not used to drinking water. So
Absolutely.
you can get creative. So I like to start with frozen berries. You can add them into your water. They add like ice cubes, act like ice cubes. So they're going to help with looking pretty in your water bottle and helping it to taste better. And you can do lime, lemon, cucumber, and that can be something that you can start with to help making the water feel and taste more appealing to you.
Beautiful. And what comes to mind right now when you're sharing this is just like zooming out on it. Like you mentioned, most people know they should be drinking more water, or maybe it's an area that they're missing out on. And it's just about making it easy and making it enjoyable. Like when you talked about like adding that flavor, because I know there's many people that don't enjoy water. They'd rather have a tea, a coffee, some kind of other drink with flavoring. And we need to make it more enjoyable so that we actually do it, right? It's the follow through that most people struggle with, right? It's like and same with other things when it comes to nutrition and health. We need to start to look at, like you mentioned perfectly, is the barriers. What are the things, the sticky points? Is it that colleague that's going to talk to me if I go to the water cooler or not? And then how do we create the solutions around it, right?
Mm-hmm. And I think education is also important. Everyone hears you should drink a certain number of glasses. I think right now you hear 8 glasses of water a day is ideal, but depending on what your needs are you outside in the hot sun for work, sweating a lot? Are you sitting in all day at a desk? So your needs may change depending on your environment and what you're doing. So learning to listen to your body is a big part of that. And one thing you can do is look at your urine when you go to the bathroom. What color is it? And if it's really dark, that's a good indicator. More than likely, you do need to drink more water. And Another thing that I find is when clients start to drink more water, more than they are used to, they might find that they're actually going to the bathroom a lot more often.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes they get really frustrated with me. And I encourage them just to work through those 2-3 days, because the body, if it's not used to drinking a lot of water, it holds the water and it struggles to use it. So then you find yourself going to the bathroom a lot, and it will adjust. It'll take some time. However, if you find you keep having to go to the bathroom a lot and it's very clear and your urine is very clear, there's a good chance that you're missing electrolytes. Your body needs more minerals or electrolytes. So this is where you hear about electrolyte waters and the importance of the good salts, the real salts being in your water is important for hydration.
Well, shout out to Redmond's Real Salts. Is it Real Salt? That's a good brand, a good
Yes,
one to
they've
include.
trademarked Redmond's Real Salt.
Yeah.
So they've trademarked real salt, and those are the colored salts. So Himalayan salt is not white, it's pink. The Celtic salts are grayish.
Yeah.
There's a gray color, and like Redmond's Real Salt has a bunch of different speckled colors in there, and those are your minerals. Those are electrolytes. And what I think a lot of people don't realize is we do need electrolytes in our water for our body to use the water to get hydrated. So those electrolytes actually get the water to go into the cells in the body. Now, for some people, if they drink well water, depending on where you are or where you live, that will occur naturally in this water. But a lot of processed water, or water that, for most of us live in cities and it's been heavily filtered, we lose a lot of those electrolytes. So you may be in a situation where you have to add them back.
Beautiful. And you just brought that point up. So like as far as water quality, and we do both highly recommend some sort of water filtration, is at a simplest level, basic level, charcoal filter. But there are more advanced systems out there that we definitely recommend. We don't usually go with tap, but the focus for today is drinking enough water, drinking more water, and making sure we're hydrating with those, electrolytes being added, like a pinch of salt in the morning, maybe lemon juice or something like that, as part of it, in the morning. That's something that we usually would recommend, right?
Yes, absolutely. Pinch of salt. And then depending on your needs, if you are someone who sweats a lot or you're working in an environment where you're going through a lot more water, I like to recommend, there's different products out there with different names, but they're concentrated salt. So one brand is Concentrace, for example. There's Aussie Trace, and you just need a few drops. You can put that in your water. It's easy to carry around with you, and that's a great way to help your body utilize the water that you're drinking.
Beautiful. Yeah. And I just want to come back to like why water is important in the first place, right? Like we all, we should be doing this. If we have a strong enough why, and we know that it's going to benefit us in many ways. You mentioned water in the morning, and like, seeing if you're dehydrated or if you need to be hydrated a bit more based off the color of your urine and the frequency and things like that. Another thing that I often find is just bowel movements in general. If you feel like it's hard to pass, your stool, or you're not going as frequently, it's dried up, things like that. You can get a lot of information from your stool. Hydrating in the morning. That's why I love you mentioned that. That was the first thing I think you mentioned was we lose water while we're sleeping, whether it's through perspiration or just breathing and things like that. Hydrating is just going to help everything flow, add the mental clarity, add so much, energy production to our body as well. Right. So that's an important point.
And to piggyback off that, what a lot of people don't know is irritability can also be a sign of thirst. So being really irritable or even cravings can be a sign of your body needing more water. And there's a chance your body's been trying to tell you in other ways that you're thirsty, and we may ignore it. We get busy, or we drink things that are not hydrating us, like coffee or sugary drinks. So our body is then going to tell you that you're hungry, hoping that what you eat has hydration in it. So there's other things that our body is going to do. It's smart to hope that it's going to get the hydration in there. So irritability, it can be a sign of that. 85% of our brain is water, and our brain actually can't store water. So that is a really important thing to keep in mind. If you're feeling irritable, you're focused, you can't function, you feel really
Headachy or
brain slow,
yeah,
headachy.
yeah.
Exactly. Those are all
Instead of
signs
reaching for the
that your
Advil
body
or
is trying to tell you,
Tylenol right
yeah,
away,
you
like
might just really,
the
really
basics,
need
back to
water.
basics.
Mm-hmm.
Like, all right, yeah, exactly. Like hydration is like
Mm-hmm.
that's one of our first places we start with clients, right?
And it's also really important. You mentioned bowel movements. So when it comes to digestion, we need water to create our digestive juices and our enzymes. So having enough saliva in our mouth and having the stomach acid we need and all the lovely mucus in our digestive system, that's all part of our ability to break down food, to make enzymes and get that energy, the nutrients out of our food. We need to be hydrated to do that.
Couldn't agree more. Couldn't agree more. And the one thing we'll jump into our other two topics for today, but the one thing I want to end off with here, we were talking about this before, is creating. Don't wait until you're dehydrated or don't wait until you're thirsty. We need structure. We're all about that at PriorityMe. Is like, how do we create systems and structure so it's not like I need to hydrate more. I should be eating a bit more of this or getting more exercise in it during the day. Put that structure in. An example: drink your 500 mils or whatever it is first thing in the morning. Have certain, you mentioned, Emily, reminders or like an alarm. If you think you're going to eat around 12, have an 11:30 alarm on your phone go off as a reminder to drink some water, and then you're hydrating before your meal, and that can pass through, and then you can have be ready to go for your meal. So just that's the one thing I wanted to highlight to everybody is it's the follow through. It's the actual misses on the opportunities to hydrate more. We need the structure, and just put in the calendar, have reminders, right? So
And one last thing I definitely communicate with the majority of my clients is try not to drink water with your meals. And this can be a really tough one because a lot of
mhm.
us were raised with probably a glass of milk or a glass of water. And as adults, we have a glass of wine, we might have beer with our meals. And, that's fine. I would say more as a treat. But generally speaking, for your overall digestive health, it is better to not drink with your meal. Sips of water, for example, are fine, but it is better to have that separate. So like you said, we were talking about earlier, 30 minutes before you're going to eat. I use that. I find that's helpful for clients to remember to hydrate and keep that glass of water away from the meal. And the reason is we want our digestive juices to not be diluted by water because we need them to be able to break down our food, especially protein. Our next topic.
Let's go right into that then. Let's talk about protein. So it's a lot of great stuff. Hopefully, you're taking away one or two things from today on hydration. Again, one or two things. What are you going to implement? Is it an upgrade? Salts? Is it structure? You name it. When it comes to protein, this is the thing that I just love talking about protein. I feel like there's nowadays more people are getting into the gym, younger demographics are going into the gym, and protein is more of a conversation, but for some it's not. Some people it's not part of the conversation at all. And I think this is an area that we miss the mark. And there's some misconceptions around protein. I'm just going to throw it back to you, just like with water. What's one or two things that keep coming up when you talk to a new client or a client that you've been working with when it comes to protein?
I think a lot of people worry they're going to eat too much protein. And I think there's been a lot of talk about that concern. And I've been doing this 8 years, and when you actually do the food journaling and you do the math, you do your macros, you realize you're probably not getting enough protein. It can be challenging to eat enough protein for most people.
You know what?
And
Can we actually define protein just for some people, just to be clear? Because some people oftentimes they might think protein is like, what, spinach is a great source of protein. I just want to make sure we're clear on that and just like give some examples of protein. Whether it's
definitely.
yeah, if you just like we've got chicken, we got animal products like animal meats and things like that. If you can just name off a few that are high sources of protein.
Like the highest sources of protein are definitely like your meats and eggs. And I like to encourage, if people are willing to try organ meats from organic animals, those can be a very high nutrient dense place for protein. You have your nuts, your seeds, and in a pinch, if you need to, good quality organic protein powder is another option. It's not usually my first go-to. I always recommend whole food first, but the reality is some people just struggle to get it in, and that's where the protein powder can be helpful. And there you do get protein from your like dark leafy green vegetables, and that would be where, depending on what your needs are and depending on your meal, you can plan that ahead. And I generally encourage people to plan their meals with the protein in mind first.
Yes.
Because it's so important, and it's one of the tough nutrients to get the most of, one of the tougher macros. So if you pick that, so chicken's a great example. If we pick chicken and then plan our meal around that, is a great way to do it.
Protein is a priority kind of thing, right? Like the first thing you look at for on the plate, planning your meals around that. And I know I kind of just jumped in there and took you off what you were sharing as far as like what you see with patients or with clients. Can we, before we go into like more things that you see, let's look at why protein is important as well, right? Like,
sure.
Just even a couple, like high level, what you think, why people should really invest more time and energy into it.
Protein is what, in a way, makes us and our ability to do what we do. It's the building block to our cells, and it makes our muscles, our tissue. When we exercise, we do need more protein to make those muscles. And it also is responsible for our hair, our skin, our nails. So there's a beauty side to the importance of good quality, healthy protein. And it's also involved in our immune system. We really need good quality protein to have a healthy immune system as well.
Perfect. Yeah. And I think that's, again, a missed opportunity. And like we talk about, like the misconception is eating too much protein. You mentioned it's really hard to get too much protein in. And what we're finding, and you've experienced, I've experienced this, is people are just really missing the mark on how much they should be getting for optimal health and for making the most, especially if you're training and you're exercising and you're doing resistance training. You need that to support all those efforts as well, right?
And I think another misconception is that what actually is the protein when it comes to measuring out
yes,
whole food
please.
meat. So I like to use chicken as the example, is a serving of chicken. So let's just talk about chicken breast as the example here. One serving of chicken is not 100% protein. So if it's a 20 grams of chicken, it's not 20 grams of protein. So the reality is, if you have a chicken breast and you weigh it, and it's 87 grams of chicken, only 20 grams of that is protein. So this is where it's can become a little complicated or overwhelming for people, and that's where I hope to make it simple and break that down. But this is where I think in the beginning, if you're really wanting to wrap your head around the macros and you find that is helpful, this is where food tracking and maybe using an app can come in, because then you can really see the difference of where your macros are. So you have your fats, your proteins, and your carbs. And that can be where a lot of people actually realize they're not eating enough protein. So that example I just gave you, that chicken breast, if it's 87 grams of chicken, and then you're actually only getting 20 grams of protein, a lot of people are thinking they're getting 87 grams of protein, and they're not.
And we've
so
seen
this
that
is
with
where it can be really helpful.
We've seen that with clients that we've already gone over. We've educated them on this, but it was still just a missing piece for them.
Yes, and this is the, depending on what you need to, what motivates you to see that and change can be really beneficial. Whether it is an app and seeing, there's like pie graphs that a lot of these apps break down, and they show the ratios between the proteins and the fats and the carbs. And I personally found that a very helpful tool with most clients. And I'm not saying you have to track your food forever, but maybe even just 3 days, just 3 good days of how you eat, maybe a week if you can, and get a good idea of what it looks like. And then I recommend the plate method. So when it comes to protein and how much protein you should be getting, it should be about a quarter to a third of your plate. And that is a really good, easy way without having to worry about taking out that scale. It's just, how does it look on your plate? Roughly a third of it, you know you're doing well.
Absolutely. And the other thing I wanted to come back to is, yes, for per meal, we're talking about getting, say, a third of our plate protein, right? And we're a lot more clear that it's not 20 grams of chicken is 20 grams of protein in a day. And you can share if there's any other thoughts you have on this, but in a day for most people, what I would recommend, and I know we've landed, in around this ballpark, it's not one perfect number, but 0.7 grams of protein per pound of body weight is kind of like that minimum mark that we want to be striving towards. For some people, we've seen this, Emily, like some people are getting like 0.3 grams. So if it does simple math, 100, if you're 100 pounds, that's 30 grams of protein would be 0.3. What we'd want for someone who's 100 pounds, they'd want about 70 grams of protein, right? So we're looking at close to, let's call it 25 grams per meal if you're going to have 3 meals. So not to confuse anybody here, like the numbers we're really giving out is a third of your plate protein, if for a meal. I'm using that plate method, and then let's call it around that 0.7 grams of protein per pound of your body weight for the day is just to kind of give an idea of what's that target we're shooting for. And we work towards it, right? Sometimes it's overwhelming for people, especially if they're not getting protein in their breakfast, right? Which is a common thing that we see, right? So,
and to add on that, yes, protein is great for satiety.
satiety,
I forgot
yes.
to mention that earlier. So if you can have protein in every meal and protein with every snack, you're more likely to have a feeling of satiety, so less cravings. If you're finding yourself, you have a breakfast and you're hungry within an hour, there's a good chance you probably needed more protein with that breakfast. And quality of that protein also matters. So if it's really a processed protein, like a sandwich salami, and that, if you're not eating enough of a whole food protein, that can also matter in terms of getting enough into your day.
I couldn't agree more. And on that, the conversation of, I mentioned breakfast not getting, typically we don't see people getting enough protein breakfast. That's just, it's not a hard rule, but that for most people. And also we talk about satiety, and I think it's a good time to kind of talk about fats, and like we can go into our next topic, because one thing with protein is you're getting some healthy fats in eggs, especially like in the egg yolks. And it's a good source of protein for breakfast. Most people consider eggs with breakfast. And oftentimes is what I see is people like, I have an egg a day or 2 eggs a day, and like I'm getting my protein for breakfast. That's one large egg. I think it's one large or medium. One large egg is about 6 grams of protein, right? So that's, if you have 2, then we're looking at 12 grams for breakfast. And if we want to be hitting our marks by the end of the day, we probably need a little bit more. But, we talked about this before this call, the concern about cholesterol, right? Eggs. I shouldn't have too many eggs because of cholesterol. So maybe it's just a great kind of time to bring in the fat conversation and some of the misconceptions that you've been seeing around fat. Because I know you get a lot of questions come up.
I do. There is a lot of confusion over fat. What, the words good and bad get thrown around a lot. So I think I'll just start surface level on quality of your fat matters. What is the source of the fat? Is it a whole food? And starting there with the knowledge and understanding of what the fat is that you're having. And this is where there is that overlap of some fats are proteins and some proteins are fats. So it's not going to be perfect. So like eggs is a good example. They are protein and they are fat. There's a little bit in there. And you have your nuts and seeds, which can be a protein and a fat. So it can get confusing. So my hope is, just for the purpose of this, to keep it simple, is if you are eating a whole food, it has a fat in it, don't worry so much about eating too much, because your body is probably going to stop you. It is very rare that you're going to eat an entire Costco size box of peanuts, because you may only eat a handful or two and you're going to be full. And I'm not saying that's a good idea to do every single day, but fat provides a signal to our body of satiety, which is a really great hack or really great knowing for helping with cravings, to help with energy. Fat is energy. So if it's a whole food, like we talked about earlier, the nut seeds, or there is some fat in chicken, there is some fat in our meats, and that's the source of fat, I try to encourage you not to worry too much about it. Now, where we need to be more concerned is it's the processed fats. I don't want to go into too much depth because I could probably talk about it for hours. There's so much information and different ways I could go about this, but when it comes to healthy fats, healthy oils, the less processed oils, the less processed fats are best. So easy rule of thumb is if it is solid, it is stable. And I like to start there. So butter is solid. Butter can stay out on the counter, not refrigerated, and it will be fine for a very long time. That is an indication that it is stable. So it doesn't go rancid. And coconut oil, that is definitely one that I get a lot of questions on. There are cultures that have only consumed coconut oil as their main source of fat for thousands of years without any incidence of heart issues. So again, processing matters, so it depends on the quality, but generally speaking, not to be too worried about eating coconut oil. Now, when we talk about butter and we talk about coconut oil, we don't eat those like we would a piece of chicken. You're not eating a cup of butter, but we're going to cook with it. You're going to put it on top of your food, and that's why it's okay, and that's why I say don't worry about it. I encourage you to put rice and butter together.
Yes.
So fat helps our body balance the impact that starchy carbs has on our body. So without getting too much into it, the starchy carbs has an effect on our blood sugar levels, and this is where fat and protein help stabilize that reaction, if you will, and that's where they are really important. So
so
yeah.
Sorry to jump in. Like you mentioned something with regards to like just stabilizing, and we know this, or some people have been exposed to this, seeing stuff on social media, you name it. We get a lot of information on there. A lot of people do anyway. And if we just have a carb alone, there might be a significant spike in our blood sugars, and then an impact on insulin. Without, again, not going into too much, protein and fat are going to be that buffer. It's going to help stabilize. So that's where if we zoom out in this conversation, protein, fats, and carbs they all have their place. We want to make sure we're getting our protein and then the fats as well. And what would you say we can talk about the amount just very, very, very briefly, as far as, is there a rule of thumb? I know we use the hand method for some things. Maybe we can use the rule of thumb for fat here.
Yeah, and that is a really good measurement, is about a thumb or two per meal, per plate. So drizzling olive oil. Olive oil is an excellent oil. That is one that's not heavily processed. So olive oil, if you're looking to get more fats in your day, so if we did a food journaling session and you realize you needed more fats, drizzling olive oil on your foods is an excellent way to add in
It sure
more
is.
fats.
It sure is. Yeah.
And fat is really important for our brain. All our tissues and our cells in our body need fat to be built, to function, and all of our hormones in our body need fat. So it's a very, very important macro, and I think it's unfortunate that there's a lot of fear around fat without really breaking down which fats, or discussing what fats are good and what fats are bad, if you're going to break them into those categories. And I think this is where it comes back to quality. So if it's processed, so if we're talking about a packaged food, if we're talking about going to a restaurant and it's a deep fried item, this is where they're using oils that are not the best choice. Those are the fats you want to limit.
A couple that you say are more processed, to put like a name on it. Like, would you say certain seed oils and things like that? vegetable oils?
So canola oil, vegetable oil, those are the ones that are mostly going to be used unfortunately, in almost all restaurants. Some are moving away from that, which is great to hear and to know there's more knowledge around that. There's a lot more research showing now that confirming, I would say, that these canola oils and vegetable oils cause a lot of inflammation in the body, and they cause structural issues in the body down the road if we are consuming them for a long period of time. Without getting into the science, because if it's something you want to look up, if you're fascinated by it, it is quite interesting. But the body will use these fats as building blocks, and our body actually struggles to use them, and it can cause problems down the road, and inflammation can occur, and this is where balancing it out with the healthier fats is important. So limiting those processed oils and limiting the rancid oils is important.
Absolutely. And it comes back to like our conversation of the whole foods being a big part of it, right? Wherever we can get the whole foods in, we don't have to worry too much exactly like what we're eating. Should be chicken, should be beef, should be fish, should be that. It's like if we want to be focused on the whole foods. We want to focus on the major items that are going to have an impact to our health, and then we can get more refined and more optimized, especially if we have a lot of considerations. And that's where working with somebody like you, having to kind of fine tune things and tweak it and optimize it is very helpful when it comes to modifying somebody's nutrition plan. I don't want to say diet here, but someone's nutrition plan. I want to wrap this up just for today. We said we would do 20 minutes here. I'm going to just do a quick recap. Let me know if I miss anything. If there's anything else you want to share, Emily. We talked about hydration, right? We mentioned that a lot of people should be drinking a little bit more, oftentimes a little bit more water, and maybe they need to be upgrading a little bit more with and getting more impact by having some electrolytes in there as well, right? Some sea salts, things like that. And having structures to remember, whether it's first thing in the morning, having 30 minutes before a meal with a timer, using a structure, a reminder, a prompt to do it, and making it enjoyable, right? You mentioned some great things with the frozen fruit, which I got from you. And then with the protein, a huge area that I think most people could level up. We talked about quantities, a third of the plate, about 0.7 grams of protein per pound of body weight for the day of protein as a target. And you mentioned something great. Awareness is number one. Track. Use an app, like use MyFitnessPal. In the PriorityMe app, we have a tracker in there that has all the bells and whistles for tracking, even if it's for one day. You mentioned 3 days or a week. You don't have to do it forever. We agree. We know that. But even if it's for one day, track or take a look. Start looking at the nutrition labels as well. You mentioned that before this call. And last but not least, fats. Fats being something not to be scared of. There's the healthy fats that we need, and there's some fats, the highly processed fats, we want to limit or as best we can stay away from. And protein and fat helping with satiety so that we don't have those cravings as much, right? And they're all tied together, even hydration. If we're dehydrated, we don't have enough water, we might have those cravings. So the power of hydration, protein, and fat is something that we know people could just level up just a little bit, and it's going to have a profound impact on their health journey. I just want to recap that for everybody watching or listening in. And Emily, is there any final, tips or pointers you'd like to share?
I think there's just one thing, and I find this is quite common with dinner, and it goes back to this idea of satiety and too much or too little. So if you're having a good, healthy, whole food dinner, and for example, let's just say you have maybe some rice and got some butter on there, chicken, and stir-fry veggies, or we have a salad. So you have a complete meal, you got all your macros in there, and you've completed this meal, and you're still hungry. And if you feel like you want to eat more chicken, do it. That would be one of my biggest takeaways, if you could take that away, is not to be worried that you would be eating too much chicken or too much protein. In that context, you're eating whole food, you have a complete meal, your body is telling you that you want more chicken. And I have encountered this quite a few times with clients where they're concerned that they're going to eat too much protein. And if your body is telling you to eat chicken, that's a great sign. And this is where the aspect of learning to listen to your body and what it wants, what it needs, is huge. Because your body isn't, in this example, you're not thinking about having cookies. That's different. You're wanting something whole food. Your body is saying, I need more protein. I need a bit more nutrients. And that's where I would say that's where you can experiment with even food journaling, tracking your mood, tracking cravings, if that's something you find would be really helpful for you to really explore what your body's telling you and what that looks like day to day.
Love it. Love it. I think awareness is number one, and getting in tune with your body, listening in, and just starting with some of the basics that we mentioned here today, the hydration, the protein, the fats. That sums it up. I would say for today, I know we could dive into each topic in way more detail, but this is the tip of the iceberg, or these are the main things that we've come across that we want to share with everybody today on some of the missed opportunities, like the things that are right there that people could just do a little bit better, and that's going to have a big impact on how they feel and the results they get, and then also some of the misconceptions. I want to thank you for being here and sharing your knowledge, expertise, your experience with everybody, and I look forward to our next chat when we dive more into nutrition. Thanks, Emily.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Have a good day, everybody.